So, Bel Air, Hampstead, Red Lion, Hereford, all their different stores. I want to thank them for hosting us. I mean, we're here because of them. We're here to help you all out because of them, and they're a great resource. They know a lot about chickens, and they like to work with us. And Twain and I, we both represent Nutrena and Cargill, and I want to Karen, do you have anything you'd like to say before we get started here?
I'll just say a quick hello and welcome from the mill, and kind of echo some of what you said. We certainly enjoy working with Nutrena and Cargill. Appreciate you and Twain and everybody's efforts on putting these together and putting these on. And rather than take up more time, I'll sign off now.
All you, Twain. Or I guess, Suzanne, do you mind going to the next slide just as a precursor here? Nothing is showing up. There we go. Just some housekeeping. So we're in teams here. Feel free to chat. So there's that little, almost little box there on the right side that you see with the 3 little lines through it. You can throw in a chat if you have any questions or comments about what you're doing. We want this to be as engaging as we can for you all. So anything that you guys want to throw in there, you're more than welcome to. At the end of the day, this is all for you. So anything we can do to make this more effective or educational for you is what we're here for. You can turn off your video on or off. If there's a line through the video and microphone, that means that it's off. So that means 1, we can't see you, and 2, we can't hear you. Feel free to come off mute, but unless you have a question, we will ask you to just mute your lines so that way there's not any background noise. But other than that, and then also there will be some Menti questions where we'll go to an online website where we'll be able to ask you questions and you'll be engaging and interactive, which I think you can go to the next slide on that too, Suzanne. And what I'll ask of you is when you do sign up, put your name as your nickname on there so that way we can get the right people the right prizes for when we go. So if you want to open up another browser, so if you want to open up like Google Chrome or Safari or something, and you go to menti.com and put in the QR code 96725392, or if you just want to hover your camera like you're about to take a picture over that QR code, it should automatically open up a website, because we're going to use this to be engaging, interactive, and there'll be some prizes, which you can go to next slide, Suzanne. So here's some prizes. So this is all about who does the best on the Menti questions, and so we encourage you to get on it. I mean, 50-pound bag of Naturewide's Chick Starter, that's pretty good, plus a beginner poultry kit. So I encourage you to get on menti.com, put in that code, and we can go from there. And that code, we'll repeat that code as we go out, and we'll put it in the chat. So otherwise, Twain, it's all yours.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I think we have a Menti question to start off here.
Yep. Menti.com. Use code 96725392. Which one of the mill stores do you shop at? 96725392 is your Menti code.
Maybe stick that in the chat if you can.
That's what I'm working on.
Okay, for the record, everybody, I don't normally watch the chat because I can't do 2 things at once. Nathan's going to monitor that, and then we'll get to your questions later. But I get distracted by the questions, and I want to think about the question, and then it just kind of messes me up. So, next slide, please.
Another Menti question: how long have you had chickens? And the other thing we like to use Menti for is that way we can kind of better understand what you all are doing, I guess, with your flock. If you're experienced, or if you want to learn about ducks, or you have no interest, or meat birds or something. So we'll ask some of those. That way we can better cater to you all too. So less than a year. Are you interested in learning about ducks? Yes or no? Okay.
Okay. We're
going
to talk about ducks.
Good. Good. Next slide. And now, are you interested in learning about meat birds?
Just so you know, there'll be nothing graphic in this, that we don't do anything like that. It's all about how to raise them. We'll probably touch on it a little bit if you have specific questions. One of the things with meat birds that I hesitate to get too deep in the weeds with, if we have a lot of new folks, is because Cornish cross meat birds are so different than other chickens, it kind of confuses people. So I want to be careful about that. So go ahead and go to the next one. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about molting tonight. Those of you that got chickens last year for the first time, you haven't experienced this yet. So this is going to happen when your chickens get to be about 15 to 18 months of age. Why don't you go ahead and go to the next slide? So it's a natural process. Hens, roosters, everybody does it. They're going to drop approximately a third of their feathers. They're individuals. They all go through it a little differently. It is a stressful time for your chickens. Next slide. Most importantly is when they are molting, they stop laying. You know, feathers are made of protein, eggs are made of protein. So this is going to probably happen somewhere around August, September, something like that, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now, just so you know, stress can cause birds to molt. So if you have a chicken that's being picked on by all the other chickens, maybe you have a predator harassing your birds, things like that, you can have chickens molt at funny times of year. So we actually developed a specialized feed, especially for molting. We used to think that, I say we, poultry industry used to just think it was adding protein to the diet to help them molt. It's a lot more than that. It is actually gearing the amino acids, especially for feather production. So we developed a feed especially for this feather fixer. It's got pre and probiotics in it. It's got a patented immune system booster called Flock Shield. But mostly, the most important thing is it was especially formulated for molting. The show people love this feed. They feed it year-round. By the way, you can feed this feed year-round. It is a top-shelf laying feed, and it's not even that much more expensive. So the key to this is don't wait till your birds are naked to feed them this. You want to get it to them before they start molting or right at the onset of molt. So when you start seeing them losing feathers around their head, because that's where they molt first, good idea to start them on the feather fixer. Next slide, please. So supplemental lighting. Those of you that got chickens last year, you haven't experienced this either. What we're talking about, well, let me back up. I am involved in a lot of our claims, and a lot of those claims start with, you know, I call them on the phone and they say your feed sucks, and it's like, okay, what's going on? Well, it's, you know, my chickens went onto your feed 6 weeks ago and they quit laying. Well, sir, you know, it's the end of November. The days have gotten shorter. Well, they laid last year. Here's the problem, or the conundrum. The first year, most breeds of chickens will probably lay through the fall and winter without you putting supplemental lighting on them. Chickens need approximately 16 hours of light per day to lay eggs. So this is actually not really that accurate a picture for what we're talking about, but that's okay. Next slide, please. So is it a right or wrong answer? Can you back up, Nathan, or you want me to wait till after the question?
Yeah, you can back up.
Okay. Back up one slide, if you would. I'll finish my thoughts there on the supplemental lighting. Okay, it's not a right or wrong answer, guys. It is up to you. Mother Nature will tell your chicken as soon as the days get shorter to shut down, and she won't lay through the winter. So you have two choices. You can add new chicks to your flock every year. And you see, to me, every question is answered with the answer is more chickens. So I like this answer. You just add new chicks to your flock every year, and then you'll get eggs every winter. If you don't want to do that, or maybe you're not set up to do that, what you can do is you can put supplemental lighting on them. It doesn't have to be a heat lamp. In fact, I am not a fan of putting heat lamps in the coop at all because of the fire hazard. LED lighting that doesn't produce any heat, very low energy. That does a great job. Christmas lights do a great job. The rule of thumb is enough light to read a newspaper by. So when I say it's not a right or wrong answer, if you want your birds to be the most cost effective, you probably will light them. And I'll tell you why. Your chickens have a finite number of eggs. When she is hatched, she has the number of eggs she's going to lay. They're already in her. Okay, it's already predetermined. Commercially, they get those eggs out. They have it down to a science. They get those eggs out as quickly and as efficiently as possible. In a backyard situation, you know, if these are chickens that you've named and they're pets, well, maybe you don't want to light them through the winter and kind of trick them into thinking. You're not tricking her mentally, it's her body. You're making her think that it's still summer or spring, and she's going to lay through the winter. And the reason why I say financially it makes more sense is your chickens eat about 5 pounds of food per month regardless. Okay, so the first 2 years of her life, she's going to lay like gangbusters. And as she gets older, she's going to taper down. If you don't light her, she's going to have a longer egg laying life. She might lay for 7 or 8 years, but those last 2 or 3 years, she's probably laying an egg or 2 a week, but she's still eating 5 pounds of food per month. Now, if you name them and they're going to die of old age at your house, maybe you don't light them, okay? But if you're going to rotate them out every 3 or 4 years, then you probably do want to light them. This is very important. If you are going to light them, you need to put them on a timer. They've done studies that lighting them 24/7 is not real good for them. They don't get the REM sleep that they need. The other thing is, put a timer on, wake them up early, and let them have a natural sunset. That natural sunset's very, very important for them. Chickens can't see when it's dark. If you have that timer go off in the afternoon, they can't see to get up on the perch. Anything that stresses your girls will stop production or drop egg production. So if she's sleeping on the floor because she couldn't see to get on the perch, she doesn't feel safe. She'll be stressed. She may stop laying. And it's kind of funny. Perception's everything. You know, Betty the chicken feels safe sleeping on the perch. It's 18 inches off the ground, which is right at coyote mouth level. But that's her perception. She feels safe there. So natural sunset, get them up early, and, you know, figure out by your, you can look it up. You can, you know, sunset and sunrise, and you can figure out you need about 16 hours a day. Or you don't have to light them at all. It is up to you. Next slide, please.
Got a Menti question here. Answer quick. You have to have artificial light for your chickens in the winter. Yes or no? True or false, I guess. And Twain, is there any sort of relationship with time of day, daylight and molting, or is it just 18 months they're probably going to molt and then a year after that?
No, you can definitely, if something affects the lighting in your coop, you know, you park a van in front of the coop window or something like that and they're not getting the lighting, yeah, you can fool the birds into thinking it's time to molt, and they'll molt. So yeah, lighting can affect your there is a health condition. If you have what we call a prolapse or a blowout, and you're going to try and save this chicken, you need to take her out of production immediately. And one of the things you do is you put her in a cage away from the rest of the chickens, and you block the light so she's only getting, you know, less than the 16 hours a day, and she'll stop laying, but you may make her molt when you do this. So, next slide. All right, getting ready to go into winter. I know we're a season ahead here, but just to talk about this a little bit, you're going to be providing all their feed in most cases if you live somewhere where there's snow and ice on the ground. Next slide, please. Going into winter, like talking about fall, that's when you want to check your birds, go out to the coop, pick them up, pick each bird up. You should be doing this once a season anyway, minimum. If you handle your birds a lot, that's fine. But you need to handle your birds once in a while just to make sure their body condition is good. If you have a really skinny chicken going into winter, pretty good chance she won't survive the winter. So, next slide, please. Scratch is only a treat. Okay. Now, are you going to hurt the chicken? Probably not. They like scratch. It's like candy. They like table scraps. They like all this stuff, but it's not a balanced diet for them. Remember, they need about 16% protein to lay eggs. Scratch is only about 10%. So if you dilute their laying diet, you know, the laying feed too much, you can drop their egg production. Will it hurt the chicken? No. I will tell you, though, if you've ever seen a chicken that is only fed scratch, when they molt, oh my God, it takes them forever to molt in, and they don't look very good when they get done. Next slide, please. You should check them for parasites once a season anyway, but fall is one of the best times to do it, just because the bugs instinctively know they need to get on a warm body before winter sets in, depending on where you live. If you live in the Northeast or the Midwest, this is applicable. So the bugs instinctively know they need to get on a body or they're going to die. So you want to check them in the fall, but you want to really check them all the time. At least once a season, grab a couple of birds. You don't have to check them all. That's what's kind of nice. That's the good news. The bad news is if you check one and she's got them, probably everybody has them, and you got to treat them all. If you fan the tail and you look under the tail and you look at the vent area, that is the most likely place you're going to see mites. It'll look dirty. And if you see that, you need to treat them. Now, it's up to you. A lot of people like diatomaceous earth. I'm going to say I like it as a preventative. I think if you have an outbreak, the poultry dust is much more effective. Either one, you should wear a mask and goggles. You don't want to breathe or get that stuff in your eyes. The poultry dust or the diatomaceous earth, whichever you treat them with, you need to do it more than once. That's kind of a common mistake. I've made that mistake. So you dust them and you think you're good to go. And, a couple of months later, you pick that bird up and she's real skinny and she's covered in bugs again. Well, if you missed any bugs that first time you hit her with the dust or the diatomaceous earth, they'll reproduce and they'll get on her again. So I like to wait 2 weeks and hit them again. So next slide, please. It's easier if you have 2 people to do that, by the way, to dust them. 1 person to hold the birds and 1 to dust.
Another good question. Can chickens get frostbite? And we'll get some cold weather here in Maryland too, so it's certainly a legitimate question. Yeah, have you ever had any frostbite issues?
Oh, we get it here in Wisconsin quite a bit. And it's typically your birds that have the bigger combs and bigger wattles. As a rule, kind of a rule of thumb, when you see a bird like this that has a big wattle and comb, that breed was probably developed somewhere where it was warmer, because that big comb is a heat sink. It is to help them deal with hot weather. If they do get frostbite on the tips of their combs, they're going to turn black and they fall off. And I mean, it sounds much worse than it really is. I'm not trying to trivialize it, but it's not the end of the world if this happens. Next slide. You can help prevent it by putting Vaseline on it. I discovered a product. I don't know if they have it there at the mill. It's called Musher's Secret, and it's way better than Vaseline. We say Vaseline here because you can get that anywhere, dollar store. But the Musher's Secret's a little more specialized. It's a little more expensive, but it works really, really well. It's for the pads of dogs' feet, and they used it for like the Iditarod and things like that. Next slide, please.
Another question. Do you need a rooster to get eggs? And remember, we do have a lot of people on here that I guess are new or, they got chickens probably last year. So pretty fair question.
No, it's actually still my most common question. So don't be embarrassed if you got that wrong. It's my most common question. I have people want to argue with me sometimes about it. You don't need a rooster to get eggs. You need a rooster to get baby chicks. So next slide, please. All right, so this section, whether you're new or advanced, but especially if you're newer, I think is very, very important because it kind of sets the stage. I mean, in this hobby, to say that all chickens are the same is like saying all dogs are the same or all horses are the same. It's kind of ridiculous. Every breed of chicken has its own traits, what you can expect. And I like to say, you kind of tailor the breed to your family and what you want that chicken to do for you. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So arguably America's favorite backyard chicken, state bird of Rhode Island, by the way. She is a great chicken, lays about 250 big brown eggs. I'm not even sure that's a Rhode Island Red, to be honest with you. They lay big brown eggs, about 250 a year. Very smart chickens, cold hardy, heat tolerant, Friendly, they're not broody. Broody means they want to be mom. For most of you, this is not a good trait. That's why they've bred that out of most of these production breeds. The reason why is a lot of you won't even have a rooster. Well, if you have a broody breed of chickens, it's just in them. They're going to want to be mom, whether there's a rooster in the zip code or not. And while they're sitting on that clutch of eggs, not only did they ruin all the eggs they're setting on, she's not laying anymore for you. And then even if you pull her off the nest and break the brood, which is kind of a whole process, uh, she may not lay for another 4 to 6 weeks. So it's not a good trait for most people. Next slide. So when you see that in the catalogs, you know, broody, non-broody, moderately broody, that kind of thing. So the Orpington may be passing the Rhode Island Red as America's favorite backyard chickens. These are really popular. They come in many colors, buff being the most common. This is what's in the picture. Think of the golden retriever of the chicken world. Super, super friendly. About 200 big brown eggs a year. They can be a little broody, but not all the time. They're not extremely broody. Great cold hardy, heat tolerant, but great with kids. Really, really popular breed. There is one downside to these. I will say they're not as predator safe. They're not a dumb bird, but they're not predator safe. They're just so trusting. You know, I joke about it. They'll walk up and introduce themselves. Hi, Mr. Coyote. I'm Betty. I'm a Sagittarius. How are you? Well, you know that's not going to end well for Betty. But if you have Betty with other chickens that will tell Betty not to do that, she probably won't. But if you just exclusively have Orpingtons, you may have some predator issues. So next slide, please. The Australorp is also the black Australorp, great beginner's chicken and great advanced chicken. What you're going to find in this hobby is people start with these, what I call the quarter vanilla ice cream chickens. They're very basic, but they're good, good chickens. And what happens is after a few seasons, maybe 2 or 3 seasons, they get adventurous and they branch out and they get some exotic chickens. And then a couple of years later, you know what? They're back to the quarter vanilla ice cream chickens. You know why? Because they're great chickens. They're friendly, they're intelligent, they lay a lot of eggs. They're just a great choice. She's from Australia, but very cold tolerant, heat tolerant. Just a great chicken, about 225 big brown eggs a year. They can be a little broody, but not too bad. When we get into what we call broody breeds, we're talking mostly Bantams. Bantams can be extremely broody as a whole. So next slide. By the way, having some black chickens in your flock, this is kind of an old farm wisdom thing. If you have a hawk issue, hawks and crows hate each other. So, you know, if you can either try and coax the crows into hanging out at your house, but it's kind of like joining the mafia. Once you get them, you can't get rid of them, even if you get rid of your chickens. Crows typically won't bother your chickens, but hawks hate crows. But having some black chickens in your flock kind of fools them from the air, you know, way up in the air. It kind of looks like you have some crows hanging around in your flock. So I don't have any clinical proof on this, but I've heard this since I was a kid. The Wyandottes, gold lace is not as common as the silver lace, but these are also a great choice. The gold laces are, I think, a little more striking looking. They both lay about 200 eggs a year, big brown eggs, all the right traits, friendly, good beginner's chicken, intelligent, cold hardy, heat tolerant. Next slide, please. The Marans, that one won't lay any eggs at all because that's a rooster. But the Marans, they come in many colors, black, copper. This is Cuckoo, which is the barring. What they're known for is they lay a very, very dark brown egg, almost a chocolate egg. They're very cool, not as good a producer as the other birds. They're getting better, but you're probably more like 100 to 150 eggs a year with these. But the eggs are really, really cool. Otherwise, they have all the right traits, friendly, intelligent. They're a French bird. They've been around for quite a while. I like them. I have a couple of Marans. Every chicken that we've run through here, I have some at home. And I've been doing chickens for about 50 years. So that tells you that just because you're an advanced chicken keeper, doesn't mean these aren't good chickens for you. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
You broke up really bad there. Yay! Looks like everybody got that one. The most common one that we deal with, there she is. All right, so a lot of confusion here. You have Ameraucanas, Ameraucanas, and Easter eggers, and you will hear those names thrown around interchangeably like they're all one chicken. They're not. They're three different chickens. Ameraucanas are the root. They come from South America, specifically from Chile. They are a rumpless bird, meaning they don't really have a tail. If you don't show chickens, you probably never come across Ameraucanas. Ameraucanas were an improvement. The problem with Ameraucanas, they lay blue eggs, really dark blue eggs. They're don't lay a lot of them. Oh, you have slides about it. Okay, they don't lay as many. They don't lay as many eggs. They're smaller. They're not as friendly a bird. So somebody improved upon them. I believe it was a White Rock they crossed them with, and those were recognized in the mid 80s as a true breed. The Ameraucanas only lay blue eggs, much bigger eggs, a lot more of them. Ameraucanas, great choice. I mean, they hit all the boxes. You know, they check all the boxes. Here's the thing: the hatcheries got involved. And why don't you go to the next slide? When the hatcheries got involved, they developed the Easter egger. I'm actually ahead of myself here. Ameraucanas and Ameraucanas both breed true. And what I mean by that is if you cross two Ameraucanas, you get another Ameraucana out. If you cross two Ameraucanas, you get another Ameraucana out. Go ahead and go to the next slide. No, we don't have an Easter egger slide. Okay, so Easter eggers are what the hatcheries developed. The best way I can describe them to you is think of an Ameraucana without a pedigree. There's nothing wrong with Easter eggers. They typically lay green eggs, about 200 eggs a year. They're friendly, they're smart, they make a great beginner's chicken. You just can't show them. And that is the only downside to them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about turkeys here. Hang on just a second.
Yeah, Twain, I think we'll talk about turkeys quick, and then we'll move into meat birds, and then we'll talk about ducks quick.
Okay.
And then we'll try to get done around there, around 7:10, 7:12, so that way we can start getting some questions too if we have some.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize, everybody. They've got me booked with another one of these right after this one. Okay, turkeys. I recommend you get started with chickens first, kind of master chickens before going into turkeys. You can basically split turkeys into two groups. You have heritage breeds, and then you have meat breeds. The broad-breasted white and the broad-breasted bronze are both meat turkeys. This is what you typically see at the farm stores. The biggest issue with turkeys is people expect them to do what everything a chicken does, and they don't. You have to be a little more hands-on with turkeys. I don't know if you heard me at the beginning. I was blabbing about you need to put paper towels over the bedding for the first 2 or 3 days because they'll eat their shavings. They eat the bedding really badly, and they can actually starve to death doing that. They starve to death with a dish full of food in front of them. They require a much higher protein feed, usually about 27, 28%. If you don't have that, the meat bird diet, the 22% will work. I've raised many a broad-breasted turkey on meat bird. That being said, they don't really reproduce. They are artificially inseminated, so they're not going to breed if you get these. If you get the heritage breeds, they will. The things like the Black Spanish and the Nagasets and things like that. But the broad-breasted, no, they just physically cannot breed. The males, toms, their breast is too big. A warning about these, the toms are very, very personable, and people make pets out of them. And okay, but this is going to be a short-lived thing. They keep growing. When I owned my feed store, people would come in, and I'd warn them, but they would come in, you know, Tommy's now on the Christmas card, and he's part of the family. And when Tommy's about 3, they bring Tommy in, and they say, Tommy can't walk anymore. Well, Tommy weighs 80 pounds now. They just keep getting bigger and bigger, and eventually their legs give out. So I don't really recommend you try to make pets out of them because the shelf life on it's not going to be all that long, and it's really heartbreaking because they are pretty personable, but they're not designed to be a pet. You're really not supposed to keep chickens with turkeys, but out of the other side of my mouth, I will tell you that that's an old farmer trick, is you put a baby chicken with your new baby turkey poults, and the baby chick will teach them how to eat. But you'd only leave them in there a couple of days. After a while, the baby turkeys will pick on that chicken and probably kill it. So you don't want to do that too long. And the reason you're not supposed to mix them is chickens can give turkeys a disease called blackhead. I'm not going to say it happens all the time. In 50 years, I've never actually seen it. I've only seen it in books, but I've got to throw that out there. So just kind of the disclaimer. Next slide, please. Okay, baby meat birds. When we talk about meat birds, this gets confusing because people eat pretty much every breed of chicken, but that doesn't make them meat birds. When we talk about meat birds in the industry, we're talking about Cornish crosses typically. The name is almost synonymous with meat birds. And the only reason I'm kind of dwelling on them is because they do make up probably well over 99% of the chicken that you eat in the market or in a restaurant. And they are very, very different than all your other chickens. All your other chickens self-regulate very well, meaning you can free feed them. They stop eating when they get enough nutrition. Not these guys. The baby meat birds, you have to help them self-regulate their diet, or they can actually eat themselves to death. They grow so fast that their internal organs can't keep up with that growth. And that also kind of depends on what technology feed you're feeding. The higher technology feeds, you're going to feed a lot less feed per bird. They're going to get to carcass weight much faster, but you have more danger of them having what we call flip over syndrome. That's the name for them overeating. But it's more cost effective. It's healthier for them. And more importantly, if you've ever raised these, you're kind of counting the days for them to go away. By the way, 8 weeks, start to finish, hatch to freezer. 8 weeks will get you about a 5.5 to 6 pound dressed bird. Do not mix these with your other chickens. They're very docile. They're not all that active. Your other chickens will pick on them, dominate them. They might even kill them. Do we have another slide on meat birds? Nope. Okay, let me finish up with the meat birds. You feed these a meat bird diet from beginning to end. You don't go through like a baby food and a layer food and all that. Nope, you're going to feed them a meat bird diet from start to finish. The one on the left, the Nature Wise, that's our high technology. The Country Feeds is not as high technology. I do recommend that you regulate their diet, and that's very simple. You do free feed them the first 3 to 5 days, and then after that, don't fill the feeders at night. It's that simple. If you fill the feeders at night, they're under lamps, they'll eat all the time. These are the Homer Simpsons of the chicken world. They eat, they sleep, they poop, and that's about all they do. I will tell you, they taste so much better than what you buy in the market. I'm not going to lie to you. You're not going to save money on your eggs. When you do egg-laying chickens, the eggs are going to cost you more. If you don't count your time on meat chickens, and I'm going to say that twice, if you don't count your time and you process them yourself, you can raise them for about the same price, maybe even a little less than what you buy in the market if you compare apples to apples. The chicks themselves are not very expensive, a couple of bucks, $2 to $3, somewhere in that range. And you're going to go through about 10 pounds of the high technology, the Nature Wise feed, about 10 pounds of feed per bird at 8 weeks. So in one bag of feed, you can raise 4 birds. It's pretty cost effective. Now, if you start paying somebody to process them for you, and now all of a sudden, any semblance of it being cheaper than what you buy in the market goes out the window, but they still taste better, and you know where they've been and what they were eating. So, by the way, if you are going to pay somebody to process them for you, the rule of thumb is the day you bring home your chicks is the same day you call the processor to set up the date to have them processed. That's how far out they can be booked. Next slide, please. All right, ducks. Ducks, you brood them very similar to baby chicks. Do not ever brood baby ducks with anything else. They flip water around and they'll get your baby chicks or pheasants or whatever, turkeys wet, and they get chilled and they die. So you only brood waterfowl with waterfowl. One of the tricks I learned a couple of years ago is if you put pee-pee pads under the shavings, you lay a layer of dog pee-pee pads down, it is life-changing. Oh my God, that made the cleanup so much easier on these guys. You never feed your baby ducks medicated feed. Next slide. You only feed them non-medicated feed. They grow crazy fast. At about 4 weeks, they can go to a pellet. I mean, that's how fast these guys grow. They could probably go outside at 5 to 6 weeks easily. I do like to give them bottled water, just like your baby chicks, when you start them off for the first week, and then vitamins and electrolytes. And just like your baby chicks, you should hydrate them for the first 4 to 6 hours before you give them food. That helps prevent pasty butt. Next slide, please. So, flock management. Next slide. So, I'm going to tell you, you really don't want to house your ducks with anything else. They can be on the same property. If you house them together, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. You know, first off, commercially, they tell you shouldn't mix species. People do it all the time. The problem with housing ducks with anything else is ducks and geese live in kind of a wet, moist environment, which, you know, bacteria and diseases, they never get sick. They have ironclad immune systems, but they can make everybody else sick. So they can be on the same property, but just don't house them together if you can help it. You also got to watch, I'm going to assume we have kids on here. You want to watch your male ducks, your drakes. They can be really hard on your chickens. They can harm them. They can even kill them trying to mate with them. So you got to watch that. Next slide, please. So ducks have very different nutritional requirements than chickens. So you feed them, they really should be on a duck specific feed. They need higher niacin, lower calcium. It's pretty important, actually. Next slide. So we developed a duck feed, came out in August this past year. We enlisted several nationally known duck breeders that show ducks, and they gave us several bullet points of what they wanted. You know, hey, if you could design your own duck feed, what did you want? And so this is what they told us. And we checked all those boxes. They all said the same thing, maybe in different order, but they all overlapped. We interviewed them separately. They wanted the lower calcium, higher niacin for the leg health. They wanted pre and probiotics. They wanted the small, hard pellets. And then they wanted them formulated with lower mycotoxins, and we did all of that. Mycotoxins are the funguses that are in grains. Chickens and turkeys, because they've been domesticated so long, they deal with that pretty well. Ducks don't. Ducks are hypersensitive to mycotoxins, so we formulated this for lower mycotoxins. So this feed is taking off in the show world. It is rocking and rolling with the waterfowl show people. So next slide, please.
Another Menti question here before we start into questions. What is the only continent without chickens? Sometimes kind of feels like it should be Wisconsin, right, Twain? Minus 45.
Yeah. Very good. Asia is kind of the birthplace of chickens, actually. And the reason...
Last Menti question. But yeah, you can keep going, Twain.
One of the reasons why, you know, it's so cold up there, but one of the main reasons they didn't want chickens in Antarctica, and they won't allow them, is they were afraid they were going to get bring diseases into the penguins. And it happened anyway, but... Yeah, it's about 3 chickens per every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth, so you better be nice to them. Next slide.
All right, so the leaderboard. If you can, I'll put my email in the chat. If you can just email me who you were, and we can get you all taken care of, and we'll get it to the mill, and they'll get you taken care of. But thank you all for joining in on that Menti and keeping it interactive. But we'll jump into questions here, Twain. I know we have a couple. We don't have much time, but I know we have a couple. The first one are, what are your thoughts on automatic coop doors?
Oh, I think they're great. I don't have one. We're in a situation where we don't need one, but the reason why these are so important is you need to button your chickens up at night. It's very, very critical. If they are not closed in at night, one bad night, you can lose them all. One bad night, you get a raccoon in there or a mink or something, and you can lose your whole flock of chickens. So they make several types, the solar powered ones, and they're on a timer, and everything I've ever read about them is positive. So I'm a big fan, even though I've never actually used one myself. Hopefully that answers that.
Next question.
Okay.
No, yeah, I think that answered it. Pelleted versus crumble. I mean, is it preference or is there a purpose behind it? I mean, what do you recommend?
Okay, there is a purpose in some cases. I'm a pellet guy. It's more efficient. When crumbles hit the ground, they're kind of gone and lost forever. And they're gone and lost forever for the chickens, but the rodents might be able to find them. So I'm kind of a pellet guy. But if you have bantams or smaller birds, they may have trouble eating pellets. And so even if you only have 1 or 2 bantams in your flock, you kind of have to do crumbles so to accommodate them, if that makes sense. The rule of thumb is all chickens can eat a crumble, but not all chickens can eat a pellet. So, but they're made out of the same thing. It's the same exact feed. They actually make the crumbles out of the pellets. So when they make a batch of chicken pellets, they'll divert half of that off and turn them into crumbles. They just run them through a crumbling machine.
Perfect. Thank you. Right now, I think that's all the questions we had. I mean, does anybody else have any other questions before we finish up here and let Twain get to his next chicken chat?
Let me throw.
Again, I threw it in the chat there. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Twain.
One of my final thoughts. First off, thank you everybody for spending time, and I apologize I kind of had to hurry up on some of these. But if you're brand new, or even if you're not real new, and you've gotten on some of the Facebook poultry pages, they've kind of embarrassed me because I've always said, chicken people are nice, and they are for the most part. The overwhelming percentage of people that have chickens are nice, and they'll try to help you. But I've heard from a lot of people that they've kind of gotten a little bit bullied on some of these sites. You know what? If you shop at the mill, you have a perfect resource. I used to go out there pre-pandemic. I used to go out there every year and do these presentations live. And they have a lot of the same employees have been there. They know a lot about chickens. Rather than, having somebody that's been on Facebook that kind of is a bully and had chickens for 18 months and is kind of a know-it-all, you have the mill right there and they can walk you through it. They'd love to help you. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Thank you for joining us tonight. But yeah, you have a great resource in the mill. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Twain. I want to thank you all for joining us and thank the mill very much for hosting us. I know it's been informative. And again, if you missed any of the other meetings, we had 2 previously. If you go to the mill has a Facebook, a YouTube page, but as well as a Facebook page. And I know they have them all posted up on their YouTube as well as their Facebook. So feel free to tune in there. Again, you can follow up with me if you have any other questions that we didn't get answered. But Karen, unless you wanted something else to say, I want to thank you all for joining.
Same here. That's all I need to say. Thank you very much to Twain, Nathan, and everybody who joined us tonight and previous nights.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you all.
I'm going to go ahead and bounce, and I got to go right to the next one.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
See you, Twain.
Take care, Twain.